What's up, everybody? I'm a little bit lonely right now. I don't know where my partner is. I don't know how these electronics work, but I'm going to do my best. Or am I lying? Dang, that was probably like the smoothest intro we've ever done.
Sadly, possibly.
Kristen,
So
what time did you wake up?
it was right when I was casting, which was like less than half an hour before.
Oh, shit.
Oof.
Yeah.
Nice
Half an hour
ASMR.
before. Got it.
Yes, half an hour before. Which I think most folks here would be like, "Oh, that's plenty of time to before, like preparing for the show." But the problem is that we have a whole checklist of things we need to get done,
Yeah.
for people to know about the show. So it was not the best to be rushing that last minute. So thanks for bearing with me.
I actually sometimes really like running late to things because it's like one of the few times in my life where I'm like, all right, I'm like actually living in the moment because I don't have time to be like over intellectualizing stuff.
Well, that's true. It helped me realize it was one particular task that I found really important to start the show with,
What was
which
that?
some of you may see sometimes. Like there is like a cast with our stupid faces that pops up sometime during the show, and like we take those like right before the show because we want to show you what we're wearing.
Yeah.
And so that one is always in a rush. But yeah, like that's where Cameron and I are thinking about how Mr. Beast type YouTubers do it. They oftentimes have a dedicated thumbnail studio, so
They,
they're really
they,
intentional in preparing for their show.
there's
So we're thinking about that.
there's some really good videos, some probably staged, of like YouTubers check or like filming other YouTubers as they're doing their like thumbnail sessions. And so you'll see like somebody just doing the like or the like and just like dumb faces, and then their friend is like filming them from the side. I think that stuff's hilarious. Oh man, we got a lot of people here today. Bubbles, thank you so much for being here early. Eloise, Kaido, awesome. And then Law, thank you for showing up per usual. And Miko, I'm sorry that I lied. I sometimes cast a little bit early before the show because frankly, I never know like the latency on Warpcast. So I just like put it out a little early. Yes, to Crypto Sam, thank you so much. Alex, Saint, okay, I'm running out of breath. Need to do more cardio.
Yeah, which we might talk about today.
Yeah.
Did you live according to any intentions this week?
So like, I think I don't have a strong definition of intention because that's not like a concept that I really leaned into until pretty recently. But
really, I feel like you were born like with your umbilical cord still attached with intentions.
no, like it. I really think that the intentionality that I like kind of try to go through my day with now is a result of having kind of been battered around by various forces telling me what my intention should be for most of my life. Like, so I, was raised Catholic in the South, not dissing any particular religion, but those philosophies just didn't jive with my view of the world and the universe. And then I joined the military, which also was kind of a pretty prescribed set of values, some of which I think are really valuable. Others I'm leaving behind in that chapter of my life. And then now that I'm in freaking startup land, I also have a bunch of people, like specifically rich venture capitalists, trying to tell me the moral way to live my life as a founder and entrepreneur, and also miss me with that crap. Yeah, so this past week, I actually, like, if I had to boil it down, my intention was to just survive. I had kind of like a pretty chaotic family adventure going, but I did. But what about you? Did you live by any intentions this past week?
Before the show started, I was telling you how I got like frustrated last night, but I think
Yeah,
it's because I am trying to live according to my intention, and like
that's
in
tough.
that situation, it was a case of like, wow, like I cannot explain enough to a friend why I cannot work with certain types of clients because they
Is it
don't meet my intention.
gotcha? So is it like you are living by your intention and it's confusing other people, or is it you're not living by the intention that you want to?
I don't know whether you feel this way, but I think you correct me the most on this, which is like I feel like there is some part of me that feels uncomfortable when I don't live according to my intention. So it's not even a big choice thing. It's like, oh, I feel like physically ill.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like cognitively questioning myself. I'm like, why am I making life so hard? Why can't I just be like everyone else and just do the thing? And but
Just,
I'm like, oh man, I have to have such high moral standards for some reason.
so is it you're frustrated that you can't just left curve it and just be like, all right, I'm just gonna pick up the rock and put it down, or you're like,
or like, why pre-select when it's already so hard, Of
gotcha.
course,
So
like
it's
there's
kind of
also other people tell me, well, that's the whole point of working for yourself, so you can make the choices.
That's tough though, because like even there's always this pernicious thing about how many of the choices do we make are actually like a free will choice, and maybe we'll get into that. But I also think that there is something pretty interesting in there about intentions making your life harder.
Mhm.
Uh, I it's really interesting because like one saying that gets batted around a lot in the military is choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. And in
Oh,
I mean, like in the military context, there's a lot of ways to go with the easy wrong. Not doing an inspection to standard, like making somebody get out all of their equipment, open up the battery slot, make sure everything has batteries. Like it's really easy to not do that because it's
mhm,
annoying and tedious.
mhm,
But it's the right thing to do in the military context because if you like do a mission without checking all of those things, you're going to not have batteries in a piece of equipment that you need at a core part of the mission. It's like a freaking rule of operations. And so in our lives, we also have a ton of those moments. Maybe it's like going with a sponsor, for your show that you don't particularly jive with or something like that. But I don't know. It is tough, but I love this episode. I'm really excited to get into it.
alrighty. Are you
Let's
ready
get these.
to wow us with the bangers?
I mean, I don't know about WoW, but I'll talk about them.
Alright,
All
I'm
right,
gonna
let's
say
get.
hi to more folks.
Please do.
So Tsunade or Sunade, we're gonna talk about some of your questions today. Please let us know how to say your name.
Yeah, for real.
And hello, Curious Hermit. Hello, Captain. Hello, Huggle Monster. You are never
Yeah.
late. And Sam. Here's the thing, Sam. A
Kira.
lot of these conversations is with a friend. It's not even involving any actual clients. It's theoretical. That's why it's hilariously complicated.
Kristen's living in this like bubble of anxiety or pre-anxiety.
Correct.
All right, let's get this first banger
Decisions.
going. All right, so we got another classic from Elle, Ol Riot Ghouls. Definitely follow her if you're not. It is a very cute picture of a dinosaur delivering TCP packets, which is just like an internet thing. It's how info gets transmitted across the internet. I picked this one for intent because, like, for the intent show, because I think Elle is one of the few people on Farcaster that like truly lives what I think her intention is, whether it's like conscious or not. And it's like
Mm.
to bring little bits of esoteric joy to the feed. And I love that. Like everything that she posts is like and like in and around this like vibe. All of her art projects, etc., are like that too. And I just love that. Have you experienced this or casters like this?
I feel like that's what makes Elle so special. Is do I know anyone who does this? It's very few. I mean, of course, a few of them are Farcaster, but like few capture the 1990s internet delight,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
she does.
Yeah.
But I
She
also
run
wonder is because it's like she's so like dedicated. You know what I mean? Like she could diversify her art and do other things. I think because she's actually a really super talented artist. But like for example, her website now, which is like a 3D room, and you can like go in there and you can like chat with people who happen to be on the website exactly the same time. Like
Yeah.
that's just like so painstaking work to make it
Yep.
work. But then she would do it, and I feel like that's what I'm also like trying to work on is like when I'm doing painstaking work, I'm like, "Grr, grr, no one will ever see this, and only I will see it." But I'm like, no, like some people see it.
Well, I mean, it's like I think she's an example of so like I think we're drawn to authenticity,
Mhm.
which is why so many people try to fake authenticity because it's like a lot less vulnerable to fake something authentic than to actually be authentic. But it's like have you ever heard the phrase "live your aesthetic"?
On is this on Gen Z TikTok?
No, I mean, like, it's kind of like honestly, I think it goes back to, like, Gen X kind of stuff.
Oh.
If Trish shows up this chat, then she'll be able to correct me on that, but it's kind of a it's a phrase to kinda describe somebody who is, like, actually the thing versus just cosplaying as the thing. And I
Mhm.
think, a lot of the times it's used in a snarky context about like somebody, smokes the right cigarettes or lives in the right part of Brooklyn or whatever, but they're not actually, in it. They're just dressing the part. And there's a much broader spectrum of like living an aesthetic than I think people get like allow because everyone just wants to gatekeep. But I think Elle authentically just lives her aesthetic with her online, persona and clothing. And I just love that because it's like you said, on the days where I'm just like, man, I'm not like as my life isn't as shiny as I would like it to be. Posting about it not being as shiny is like being authentic about what's actually happening versus posturing for a social platform.
So are you living your aesthetic?
Some days, I think a lot of days I do. I almost would venture to say most days I do, but some days I don't. Right, like and I also don't quite understand my own aesthetic right now. I think like
Hmm.
I discover that through the act of like making things and sharing things. And so every episode of OK Banger is another hour's worth of study to figure out how I really think and want to move through the world. So it's a work in progress. All right. This next one from Chic Bangs, who I'm not sure if they'll show up today. It's just them introducing themselves, and I say like just with a lot of affection. But for me, what's really cool about Chic and the stuff that she posts is all of it is oriented towards her journey through music and creating. And specifically, it like goes into frankly how long it takes for that kind of stuff to start hitting in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And so like she started releasing her music on Chain in 2022. It's late 2024 and like she has like levels of success but I'm sure not where she would love to be because stuff takes time and intentions are voted for every day with every action. And that's what's really cool about reading this to me.
Yeah. Well, Cameron, do you identify as Gen Z?
I don't. I'm like I'm a millennial. I'm 32. I'm not gonna like LARP as a
I'm just
Zoomer.
Zillennial. Is that what we were deciding?
I don't know. You just kind of like depends on the lens. I
You
appreciate a
are an
lot
old
of.
soul.
I how can I be a Zoomer if I'm an old soul?
Well, you're I think you're a Zuma on the outside, like a crispy shell, and then like on the inside, you're really old.
I do not know if crispy is a compliment or an insult, Kristen.
Oh yeah, yes, to crypto. Who knew OK Banger was really OK navel gazing? Is
Fair.
it not obvious in the last 12
I mean
episodes?
it
Navel
it
gazing each other, your navels. There's a lot of navels being gazed.
you heard it here first, folks. Kristen likes to look at your belly button.
I like to look at your belly button. Correct.
All right, let's not.
Um,
Oh, do you want to?
Oh wait, but before this, I
Yeah,
feel
yeah, yeah.
like an intro post, like even though like some of us may have been around, like I did one relatively recently, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this has been like such a great like reception. So I think like there is something here because there's new people joining all the time, and like everyone we forget what's going on all the time. It's really
Yeah.
helpful, especially those of you in the chat. Like if you reintroduce yourself, like then we can get to know what you're about, and like you can also like update what you're about with every introduction.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this by not posting about myself enough because like, you all have this, oh, people are tired of hearing of you talk kind of thing.
Mhm.
Hey Achilles, thanks for jumping in the chat. The Yeah, I should probably do another one of these too. I don't know, maybe just put it on repeat. We've been talking about like rituals and stuff like that because
Mm,
if every week another 1% of the network grows or whatever, that means like every month a bunch of people have no idea who you are.
right. And I think
Hmm.
writing, like this goes back to writing, right? Being able to introduce yourself in a condensed one cast format, it
Yep.
takes practice.
Yeah. And it takes humility because like you want to present yourself as this nuanced, complex, multifaceted person, and ain't nobody got time for that. Like they want to like get a little blurb, and I think that's okay. Ooh, Gwen has some thoughts about reintroducing herself. She's been doing it for a minute, so I would listen to what she says. Been a couple months since I got to Farcaster, but might be time to do a reintro post there for sure. For sure.
Yes.
Ooh,
can be considered premeditated intent.
That's ooh. Let's talk about that later, Kristen. We got some stuff that we want to share there. All right, we got this one from Linda here. When starting a company or fund, people often ask, how much have you raised or how many employees do you have, as proxies to how successful it's going. Helpful to train yourself to not get caught up in caring about these numbers, as it tends to lead you in the wrong direction. Any gut reactions?
Oh, I saw her post this on Twitter too. So I was like, yes, this is a strong cross post. It was actually my first reaction. Yeah, I think I was curious. Okay, maybe I should have asked her directly. It's like, okay, what are the metrics that you care about right now for Bountycaster? I'm assuming that whatever she says is wisdom, because she's been both on the builder side and the VC side.
Yeah, so that's what's really interesting to me about this. I was just checking the bio to make sure I got the fund right. But so she founded a Scalar Capital, which is like, if you don't know how VC works, like there's a bunch of nuances to it, but like one of the core pieces of it is that deal flow is one of the dominant variables in success. So if you're a fund that has that is known for being like high prestige, you typically get the best companies coming to you to try to raise from you. I would put Linda and her orbit as like that. Maybe not like explicitly as, gold minted as an Andreessen Horowitz, but like definitely in that orbit. And for her to be like, hey, because this is what this says to me. All my friends are asking me things about my company, Bountycaster, that make me feel really bad. And I try to remember to not feel bad about it. Like
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you read between the lines.
Like, I think that's really cool. Like, there's a bunch of like baggage that comes with it. Right. But a person that is like pretty insider in terms of like insider versus outsider to the industry is trying to make her own way with like bootstrapping this thing and still feeling the like feelings and the like anxiety of all this like social status signaling. It's good to remember that people are people. And let me catch us up on some chats here. Asus over on Twitter, like, I agree that intros change over time. Actually, I wonder how Linda introduces herself with Bountycaster to new people now. Most people probably know her. All right. I want to come back to that, Asus. If you stick around.
It's funny that Asus said this, because to me, like, Asus is a friend, and I'm like, yeah,
oh,
she's
cool.
an international man of mystery. So I'm like, what elevator pitch are you up to this time?
All right, and then we got someone over on on Twitch. Excuse me, Evelyn George. If you're a robot, hello. If you're not a robot, hello.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna pull this up. Like, so we are actually multi-streaming on Twitch. Of course, like most of our the folks that we know on YouTube. But we're curious, like, when we go live, whether we're able to reach a new pocket of friends who are on Twitch.
Yeah, we are a work in progress, folks. We're figuring stuff out in the arena, if you are so inclined, of content creation. And Kristen, you wanna comment on this from Alex?
I know. I was looking at that. I was like, oh, Shani, you said the thing. So the comment is, in my opinion, DeSantis is influenced by her security financially. If you're broke, then raising is a huge and meaningful milestone. Oh, I get what you mean, because it's sort of like you have to. This is sad. Like, in reality, you have to have a certain amount of social and financial capital to be vulnerable in a public space, oftentimes. However, I've also seen it done. It's really, like, you probably know. There's like the little cringe founder who overshares failures, but it's like just, you're kind of like watching like in a train wreck kind of way, to be like, what are they up to next? That's even worse. And you don't want, I don't know. You can own it if you take it to the extreme. It's like, and some people eventually make it, and you're so happy for them when they do make it. Like Michael Lynch. Do you know who that is? MTLynch.io.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So he has an account of Farcaster. He's not active, but I've been watching him for like years and years trying to make something happen. and like and I feel like he's been able to be quite frank with his journey, even though at times when he's falling on his face and making like some very hilarious mistakes, you know. But you saw like you also have to be a good writer to be able to capture people's attention.
I mean, people love stories, right? Like that's really what you're selling when anytime you're posting online is like a story about what you're doing. But I don't know. I think Alex is super right. And it's like all a question of degrees, right? Because even if you are financially secure, like not raising can be the wrong move depending on what you're trying to do. Or if you're broke and you raise, but then you get kind of addicted to the process of raising, or you do that at the expense of building the thing, it can get out of hand really quickly. So like as with everything, you got to say the thing that everybody hates, but it's a balance.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get through here because I want to talk more about intent.
Yeah. I see that the Woofy has jumped over to Twitch, which is
he's jumped ship.
Nice. Very nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I whatever. Watch where you want to watch. The most of the chat is happening on YouTube. All right. So July, our resident, I don't know, philosopher, Greek statue guy. Today I learned birds don't need GPS because they can see Earth's magnetic field. Kristen, did you know this?
Yes.
Where did you learn this?
Classic thing you learn in neuroscience class.
Oh, that's interesting. Talk about
it. Like it's the birds, the monarch butterflies. Like these are like the best publications will feature this. Showcasing that these animals have this like third sense, or like not third sense, a hidden sense that we don't understand. But I think like there's a lot of study kind of like this that shows you more about like potentially how, but I don't think we understand actually how they do it.
Interesting. I knew this vaguely. I hadn't seen the visualizations, but they kind of like match my electricity and magnetism courses in my physics major. So like that tracks. The version of this that I actually find much more interesting is how pistol shrimp can see a lot more visual spectrum colors than we can. I just find it, it's kind of like a 14-year-old philosophy take to be like, what if we see different colors? But like, we know we see different colors than different creatures on the planet, which is like fascinating.
Oh yeah, and even between you and me, there's a study that's done with monkeys. Okay, so this is like I literally heard this from Instagram Reels last night, so that's why no citation. Hell yeah! But it was one of those like science influencers who said that she studied monkeys and the retina cells in monkeys respond differently to the same color, which indicate that between monkeys they see differently, like even for the same color, which would infer that we also like when you and I are looking at the OK Banger red and blue, we're not seeing the same color.
Dude, that's crazy. How the heck do we ever agree on anything if we can't even see the same freaking colors?
We're just a bunch of blind people feeling our way in the world.
Good thing we got bombs. All right, let's go to this last one.
IRC Isa says different languages can see different colors. Yeah, there's this thing going around with like, which color you call green versus blue. That also, is about the way we describe colors. And then the Woofy says, this explains why I have such a shitty design takes. Well, that
tracks.
No comment.
Woof. All right. So this last banger here, the okayest banger of the week from old Murtaza of Drop Global News. By the time you're in your mid-30s, cake and other desserts of that nature no longer taste really good, but you continue eating them out of habit.
I didn't think about this, but like just now when we were prepping, but now I have the zinger. Which kind of gets into Asian desserts. Like that are made not too sweet.
Okay.
For the Asian woman palate.
I spent a summer on a military exchange in Taiwan. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh yeah. I think folks here may not know that Cameron has been living in Taiwan.
Yeah. So I studied at the Chungcheng Institute of Technology, which is kind of like they have a different military structure where they like have a technical college and an administrative college, and then kind of like a more combat arms college, if I recall correctly. But they definitely have a technical college, and so I went to the technical one, and just like being a typical American with the typical American trash palate. it took me like weeks to get used to Taiwanese desserts. Not that they weren't good, but they just like weren't what my brain thought of as dessert.
Oh, were they not sweet enough?
Definitely not sweet enough, but they were also like a bowl of Jello with like ice in it, kind of stuff.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And so it was
We like
like
the texture.
and I like after a couple of weeks, I actually really enjoyed it, and obviously it was like a healthier way to live than eating, 1,000-calorie cookies. Of course, when I came back to the U.S., I got re-addicted to sugar, but it was like travel for me is really interesting, especially like long-term travel, because into like a alternate universe version of yourself, and you are forced to confront the you that could have been, which I always find interesting.
So what's the you that could have been?
I could have just been eating a lot of Jello with ice.
Oh,
No, I like also could have eaten a lot more fruit.
Mhm.
I also probably would have died of dehydration because it's too hot. I'm too sweaty for Taiwan. Like the tropical temperature
Mm.
just
Yeah,
ain't it for
yeah.
me.
Was it in like Taipei or I guess it's not,
So
right?
so the college was outside of Taipei. I forget the name of the town.
Mhm.
And then we, did a bunch of kind of like enrichment tours across Taiwan as well. But like I
Mhm.
just like went to their military college and like went to class like a normal cadet. It was a lot of
Wow.
fun.
Yeah, because they have a mandatory draft there.
Yeah. Yeah. They cert they well wait, I don't know if it's mandatory. Uh uh, I don't know. I'll have to look that back up because I went like almost 10 or over 10 years ago now. So it's been a minute.
Oh, and maybe they relaxed it.
Mm.
But I know this because I dated someone from Taiwan
Ooh,
who
interesting.
dodged it.
That's funny. All right. So, do you think food gets worse in your mid 30s, or like the food that you've been eating your whole life gets worse?
I think the well, I think that yeah, yes, the crypto here says disagree. Find things are better. I think for me, it's more like after you eat a few bites, you realize that oh wait, this is kind of gross. And I feel
Yeah.
like that break isn't quite as obvious when you're a kid. You just like devour the whole thing. Whereas
Yeah.
now I do try to like eat a few bites and share desserts and stuff because I'm just like yeah that the diminishing law of returns of dessert is more obvious.
Mm. So I've found, so I kind of cursed myself like in the past like 6 years. So I
Hmm.
grew up eating like, I'll just call it like white trash taste. Like my dad is from Watertown, Tennessee, which is like middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
And I didn't grow up eating a lot of fruits because my parents didn't like fruit, and so it just wasn't really in the house. And so I
How
grew up.
different.
I mean, I grew up just eating a bunch of I don't know, pretty make funnable stuff like saltines, and I didn't eat bologna as much, but like bologna, Miracle Whip kind of stuff.
This is
And
my very
then
sad Asian face.
I mean, like, I wasn't sad because I didn't know.
Oh, that's true. That's
And
true.
and then when I went to military college, I ate military food, and then I went into the
Oh,
military and ate
well,
military food. And like the one thing that the military does reasonably well, which is breakfast, which is probably why I have such an affinity for it now.
hmm.
But once I got out, I was fortunate enough to get into Harvard Business School, which is much more in the orbit of nice restaurants. And so
Mm.
like I started to be exposed to people that knew how to cook, like actually knew how to cook, and went to kind of like some nicer spots. And that's not like my default, but
Mhm.
I've raised the bar on what like a peak food experience is for myself,
Mhm.
so much that like when I try to eat a Twinkie or whatever that like I would just devour as a kid, I eat it. I'm like, I don't know if I like enjoy this being in my body the same way. Cause like it doesn't taste as good, in my opinion, as I was a kid,
Mhm.
but it tastes the same. Right. And so it's just like my perception of what is like a taste that I want to engage with is very different now. And so, I mean, I still love Taco Bell, and I think I will until I die. Um,
Mhm.
but I also know that like I can probably stick with like two quesadillas instead of five. You know what I mean? Because it's like not the trade off that my intent is like that I've set to follow actually reveals to me.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to some of the questions from our viewers, I do want to mention that we are, adapting to the channel changes, and we also
Yeah.
want to set a weekly ritual for our
Woo.
channel.
Yeah. So keep an eye out tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the OK Banger channel. We're going to have what we think is a nice ritual that like the community is going to like. So keep an eye out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then we hope to feature more of you, and we'll be hanging around that particular cast.
All right. Before we jump into intense stuff, I do want to answer this from Saint because I think it is a fun question. The best meal that I had when serving in the military. So I'll give you the one-time best meal and then the consistent best meal.
Mm-hmm.
So the one-time best meal was actually in Afghanistan. I was deployed there 2016-17, and we would typically run missions in a place called Tarankot. And our missions were generally drive these generals, like U.S. generals, to go talk to the Afghan generals, and they would like talk about fighting, and then they would just do whatever. But so we would sit outside these offices where they would, do their meeting for 6 hours or whatever, and they would have tea and chai and like do kind of like the chai talking culture. And I would be outside with my squad or platoon, and we'd just be like, all right, we're sitting here for 6 hours. And so sometimes we would make friends with the Afghan soldiers. Some liked us, some didn't. And that like one time this Afghan guy was like, hey, next time you come, bring me stuff, and then I'll get you food. And I was just like, hell yeah. And so we brought him a couple boxes of chem lights, like glow sticks, and we traded these glow sticks for a couple chickens and like a bunch of containers of rice. And we just like ate the chicken and rice there. And since I'd been like deployed for, I don't know, like 6-7 months at that point, that was like the single best meal I ever had. And then naan, of course. I ended up paying for it later in some stomach issues, but it was still the best meal that I had in the military. Second best is the chicken tomato feta MRE, the meal ready to eat, meals in a bag.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I like to experiment with MREs.
They like that one's by far my favorite. I think they discontinued it, unfortunately, but you can still find it.
I'll find it on eBay in the surplus. And
So
MRE's meal ready to eat, in case people don't know about these instant meals.
So like the way you eat it, though, it's really important, is it has a cracker in there. And what you got to do is you got to take the cracker, crumble it up in the pack so it's like a breading. And then after you cook the main entree, you put it in there and mix it up. And it's like the texture of the cracker with the chicken tomato feta is what makes it really good.
Okay. Well, I'll look out for it the next time we go hiking. So we have a whole bunch of questions today. Many of them are from Sunaid, who's in the chat with us today. So
hell yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I feel like you have good answers for some of these because you and I have talked about it between ourselves. So, which is, how do you know someone's hidden intentions when they seem open and genuine?
It's really hard. It's really hard to know if someone like, so I basically think about like, is someone bullshitting me or not? Like that's like just how I categorize somebody that I have to interact with a lot of the time. And it's a very real problem as a second lieutenant, as like an officer in the military, because if a private or a specialist or a sergeant can get away with something and like not do what you want them to do, they will, because you are a, babyface 22-year-old that some 30-plus-year-old like has to listen to by law, and they don't want to. And so like knowing when somebody is just like blowing smoke up your ass is like really important. One classic thing people will do, or what sergeants will do, they'll be like, hey, Lieutenant, we need a box of grid squares. And so you got to go find a box of grid squares for the platoon. The trick is, so a military map is like, a piece of paper with like terrain and stuff on it. And the individual quadrants on the map are the grid squares.
Okay.
And so like going to get a box of grid squares is a made up thing. It's not real. It's a wild goose chase to make the lieutenant look like an idiot.
Okay.
Hilarious joke. There's versions of it all throughout military history. Always makes me laugh. And also something to be super cognizant of when you're going into somewhere and there's like a hazing ritual for somebody. So like without good priors, both with like people in general and specifically to the context that you're in, it's really hard to tell if somebody who's a good liar is lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
The things to look out for is like aggressive nonchalantness, if that makes sense. Like if someone is interacting with you and they're like it's like a new interaction and they're like super duper cool. I found a lot of those are kind of like, hey, I'm trying to be less obvious than like I normally, because like when you meet a new person and there's like a baseline level of like normal respect,
Mm-hmm.
that person isn't like a normal person a lot of the time. Like they might
Mm-hmm.
not be like weird or anything like that, but like the first time you meet someone, you act a little bit different. And so like if a new person is very, very calm, cool, and collected, that can sometimes be an indicator, but there's not like a tried and true way of figuring out if someone's BSing you unless you like know about that situation specifically. Like the way that you fight that in the lieutenant land is
Mm-hmm.
by finding out that things like boxes of grid squares, chem light batteries, like glow stick batteries, exhaust samples, like all of those things are notoriously not real. And
I'm trying to
so,
think how this applies to a civilian situation, unless you're going through hazing. But have you ever encountered people who are like part of the dark triad of narcissism sort of things? Like, because I've met one person who's like that.
yeah,
And I think like that has like changed my opinion of like, oh, how can you tell? Because it was
like a
very
true
disturbing.
lizard person.
Yeah, true lizard person.
Yeah,
Like I think there's like people who are like being a little bit deceptive or like
yeah,
trying to get their way, which is still okay. That's still within the realm of normal human behavior.
yeah,
But then like these people, like it was a situation where like she seemed completely like fine and nice and whatever, and I would
yep,
consider her a good friend. But once there were certain scenarios I discovered where she was blatantly lying,
yeah.
it's like you call them out and there's nothing behind their eyes, and I'm like,
Mm,
wow, like that is creepy.
that's a good point. Like the thing that I think we're gonna keep going into, Tsunade, I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, uh, is at first glance, it is very, very, very hard to tell if a good liar is lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's only through like longitudinal observation that you can figure it
Mm-hmm.
out, like over time.
Yeah.
The like in it, like bouncing off of what you said, Kristen, there's two scenarios where like I've been able to consistently tell if someone was like a true lizard person, like they didn't have we'll
Mm-hmm.
say like a positive intent for our interaction. They were either neutral or like they didn't give a crap about me at all.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is how they treat people that can't directly benefit them.
Yeah, that's a really telling one.
And so like that's waiters, that's people at like a checkout counter, it's somebody that just, shows up to an event and nobody knows who they are yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like how they're treating a stranger that they don't have like a beat on, like, oh, this person can help me get my next job or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's one good way to be like, oh, they're probably going to treat me like that if I can't benefit them tomorrow. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing, and this is, I think, the most applicable to the civilian world,
Mm-hmm.
see how they act when they're tired. If
Mm.
somebody is tired, if somebody hasn't gotten the sleep that they're used to, if they're in like a little bit of a stressful situation, like their plane gets delayed or something like that, how they react to that to me has always been a very, very good barometer. Is this person who they're acting like they are when they are like well rested? Um, you would you would be shocked at the amount of Harvard Business School people that the second that something goes wrong on like a trip, or the second they have to wake up a couple hours earlier than they like want to, they turn into basically like an 8-year-old. It's crazy. I don't know, Dewolfie. Maybe you wouldn't be shocked, but a lot of people who hold places like that in very high esteem might be.
Mm-hmm. So, like you've probably heard of the saying, like trust then verify sort of thing.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like practically speaking, that's what I do. Like, although I
Mm,
think I appear very trusting, which is but I'm
yeah.
usually pretty skeptical actually. So I would like baby step it and like have little engagements with new people, and
Mm,
then like like they are sort of like tests, for my own safety, right? And I
Yeah.
will see how people interact in these situations, especially in the super low stakes ones, and then look
Yeah.
out for all these signs. So I think that is the key, is like don't like overly trust people like in the beginning, but also like titrate it so that we're not like never meeting anybody. And
Titrate's a
then
good word.
Tsunade asks, like, so when you do detect like bad intent, do you call them out or do you just fade out?
I mean, it depends. Like whatever your energy is. Like if you have to do something, right? Like if you just got a new job and you're trying to figure out if your coworker is a psycho, like yeah, you just kind of got to deal with it. But you got to adjust your interactions based off of like now your new assessment. If you have the luxury, like old Alex was talking about earlier, of maybe having more freedom of maneuver because you've saved up some money or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you don't let that person into your life. I think that there's a version of this which is too extreme, which is cutting everybody out of your life. But I don't think that we go no contact with enough people in general. Like,
Oh, you think that there should be more no contact?
I think so because like
I agree.
like like
Especially with people pleasing friends. I can say that because I feel like I have that disease, but there's certain people pleasing friends where I'm like, why are you still friends with these people?
Yeah, it's
this
like the
sucking
world
away
is big. Like the world is big, your time is limited.
Mm-hmm.
You like there's no point in being intentionally unhappy in your relationships because they're hard enough to make work when they're with good people.
Mm-hmm.
Like because people are complicated. And so I think it's just like if you have the freedom to just be like, hey, thanks, but no thanks, I don't want to interact with you, like that's a really freeing thing to feel.
For sure. So, moving internally, what do you do when you are meeting someone? Like you have an intention of asking them for something, but then, you feel kind of yucky on the inside because you're like, oh, I have this intention and they don't know yet.
Okay. So I think, sorry, can you re-ask that question? I got distracted by Saint's really good question right here.
Oh, answer
Actually,
that one first.
yeah,
I was also distracted for a second as I was talking. Let's deal with this one
yeah.
first.
So Saint, like, I think, like,
Oh,
how
let
do
me
you
read the
deal with,
question out.
yeah, how do you
How do
deal
you
with
deal with
people?
people with bad characters? I was trying to do harmony with you. That was
Yeah.
developed due to no fault of theirs, like trauma.
Saint, you don't need to solve the world's problems.
Oh,
Like the world is hard, and of course, like being a light that other people can like bask in is a beautiful thing to do, but it's not your job in many cases to solve other people's stuff. I think that this is kind of like a common trend in dating discourse right now. But like you don't have to like make your life worse to help somebody else that like is dealing with their own stuff. It's like it's nice to do that. It's more complicated if it's like family where like you have these extra relationship obligations, some case real, some case imagined, but like there has never been a better time on planet Earth for people to learn why they feel a certain way. And so as like Sam points out, like trauma doesn't like necessarily remove accountability. Like the emotions people feel as a result of trauma are real and they might not understand them. But also you can't scroll through any type of feed on the internet without getting a note about how therapy might help with stuff. You just can't. It's like a well-known thing in most parts of the internet now that like, hey, like you can probably spend some time working on yourself, and at the very least it's not going to hurt you. And so for somebody else to not put in that work today, like it's a spectrum always, but like if somebody needs a little push, like sure, maybe you are the person in their life that is the first person to recommend like, hey dude, I think you got some stuff going on, maybe you want to talk to somebody about it. And like if you feel empowered enough to like be that person for a little bit, sure. But at any point during that process, you can also be like, hey, this is above my pay grade. I can't help you with this. And also, I'm not going to like let you burden me with all of your crap because like it's not your job. that's like a Cameron, not a doctor take. But what do you think, Kristen?
I think it's tricky. Like this whole like go to a therapist thing is a very quintessential United States of America slash Canada thing. I'm trying to be
Yeah.
careful to not just say America these days. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
about other people? So and before there was therapists, there used to be more like social structures, like
Yep.
you know, religious leaders, shamans, whatever. Like there's other
Cults.
people who's yeah, Farcaster. Like there's other people whose role is to help in these situations, and those roles are not as prominent anymore. And there's also some cultures, right, where like friends and extended relatives play that role of like helping people out. But I think nowadays it's just so tricky because trauma has gotten so complex and messy. My theory is that as there are more generations of human beings born, like there's just more and more trauma being built up because it's like never completely resolved each generation. It's kind of like passed on, epigenetics, like all sorts of things, and it makes it really hard to help people sometimes.
So I definitely hear that on the sometimes, but do you like not think that the world is getting better at understanding emotions?
I think we are getting better in a sense that now we know that there's trauma load, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this was a concept until relatively recently.
Yeah. Like
but it's
I
also
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
Like our lives are not like simple. I don't know whether like I feel like my life has gotten unnecessarily complicated.
Yeah.
Therefore, like a lot of these like psychological / social situations require some amount of professional help. Well, at least like some self-help. You know, there's a lot of resources available, but people need to take the time to actually act on them.
Yeah. I think the thing that sticks out to me though is like, and this is, in my opinion, pretty hard to argue with, like, there is less objective traumatic things happening, right? Like less people die, less of the time, more infant mortality rate is down, like all those kinds of things about the world, like overall quality of life across the world is generally higher. Is there a lot of things that need to be improved across the world? For sure. But like the median person today is going to have a better life, like on most metrics, than the median person 100 years ago. And so like in that context, it like there's definitely, I mean, I feel like we're going to reference The Good Place so many times in this show, but like there's definitely a good place. It's hard to be an objectively good person because you're not growing your own food and there's supply chain evil and all that stuff. But even with all of that, I still feel like it nets out to like, oh, you have a unique opportunity today to like be the best version of yourself, when in most times of history you couldn't. Like objectively, you could not get out of your bumfuck middle of nowhere town to like do anything. You know what I mean? I won't feel comfortable until I tell a complete. Well, you don't trauma dump on the first thing of therapy. You go to a bunch of therapy. Like if you haven't done therapy in the chat, like I think it gets dumped on unnecessarily in some ways. Like some of it's valid, but like I've gone to therapy at like various points in my life, like pre-military when I was in high school, during the military a little bit, but not really a lot because there's like a weird medical aversion there. Post-military to help with my transition, I went for an extended period of time, and I haven't recently, but I have a group of friends that Kristen has pointed out that kind of supports me through this kind of stuff now. Talking to someone is just forcing you to look at your own brain. Like a lot of the time, the other person doesn't really matter. Sometimes they can like provide an intervention at the right time, and that's like really, really helpful. But I think the most valuable part of it for me was forcing myself to wait a second and like sit in the thing that I thought that I was feeling. Like, what do you have any experience with that, Kristen?
I am sitting in myself and experiencing my feeling.
Yeah.
Of being allowed that question. Yes. I think it's so multimodal, you know, you got to try a little bit of everything and then see what works. Which I know is a bit of a cop-out answer. But definitely back to the point of like not solving other people's problems and just like focusing on our own challenges is probably the best.
Yeah, like putting a bow on that one. Sam points out there's two types of trauma: internalizing and externalizing. trauma dumping on somebody that is not equipped or willing to hear about your stuff is a form of harm to other people. That doesn't mean you should pull the default like American male perspective and like shove it down, but like you gotta like there's a time and a place to share your struggles, and
Mhm.
it's not to somebody who doesn't really want to participate. Kristen, I do want to get into something before we do whatever the heck we're going to do next.
Mm.
Do you have an intention for your life?
I think so.
What is it?
I think we talk about it quite a bit, right? Like my intention is to use the content creator framework to help others go towards spiritual awakening, however they choose to embark on that path.
Hmm.
It's a bit of a modern take on it, I think.
Yeah,
Like
that's
for me,
like,
it's really like my like life's mission is to figure out a path that actually integrates livelihood. Whereas, like, I think a lot of these traditional religious paths, including Buddhism, it's like kind of like, well, you remove yourself from the world, and then
mm,
you pursue, like, you know, what you need to do, like, to achieve spiritual awakening, which I think is so too tough in today's world. Like, you know, and then there is like, you know, the original Buddha and all of that did teach a path for like lay people, like normal people,
yeah,
that is kind of underemphasized in Western Buddhism,
yeah. I
which
haven't really
used
seen
to
that
not
that
be
much.
monastics. Yeah, so I feel like I'm trying to dig up, you know, what or even experience myself, like what could that possibly look like? And to me, because of techno-feudalism and hyper-capitalism, which
Yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
like forced into in this world where everyone has to be a content creator in order to survive, it is like twist away. Like that to me makes it like a like a juicy path almost of like, okay, how
Mm,
do you make it then? Like, how can you do what you love and also be able to understand yourself better in the process? That's
Practical Buddhism by Kristen. I love that.
yeah. So I think that's why I'm drawn. Like every day I'm like, oh, I need to do other things. I'm like, okay, time to upload. Okay, man.
So
You know, my actual task list.
So I got a very different take on intent, but it
Mhm.
might be just like in the execution. Also, hi Izzy, thank you for dropping in. So my intention, I think, very explicitly, is to be more joyful, and all of the things that I do are like the how. And so,
I love that.
like you explaining like what you're doing or like how you're doing it feels to me like my like next step of what I'm doing. Cause like if I don't have the like
Mhm.
the light that I'm like chasing, I can't come up with the list of tasks to do.
Mhm.
Life is more than a list of tasks, but sometimes it isn't. Um, and so like for me, doing this show, making Seymour, exercising, talking to people in the replies and interacting, like those things are how I am trying to discover what brings me more joy in my life. And like obviously joy is different than happiness. Right? Like I can eat a piece of cake and be happy for a little bit, but that's not like contributing to my joy necessarily, sometimes, but not always.
So what is joy?
Joy to me, at least in like this chapter of my life, is living accordance, like living in accordance to how I want to spend my day.
Mm.
And, you know, work and effort and trial and suffering to a degree is like part of that. It's like I'm not going out and, you know, cutting my wrist, blacking my eyes like an emo kid to suffer, but like I'm doing things that don't have a guaranteed chance of success. I'm opening myself up to the most toxic thing in the world, which is the internet. I'm, you know, talking with my friend 2 hours every week, and like all of these kinds of things are an experiment to see if it contributes to the like the be more joyful intent. Um, yeah.
So
So
isn't
like,
it psychological though? It sounds like you have a list of like virtues, kind of like a Ben
yeah,
Franklin
yeah, yeah.
situation. And if you meet those, therefore you are joyful.
I mean, inverting that, I've like created a list of inputs,
Hmm.
right? Because we want to focus on inputs instead of outputs.
Oh
And if
yeah,
I can
that's gonna be a
do,
recurring theme for the
yeah,
rest of this series.
like like the inputs to my life are the only thing that I can kind of guarantee, right? It's like like I have control over this meat robot, and they can like get up at 6 a.m. if I like make it.
This meme robot was coming clearly.
Yeah, no, I mean, but you're also 3 hours behind, so you weren't like, you didn't sleep in that late.
I know. But like, what is your list if you're comfortable sharing?
Well, okay, so I did promise I'd share this before during this episode. So like, it's important to understand why I got out of the army before we go into this like list.
Oh yeah, someone asked that.
All right, so I got out of the army because I did the math. I looked at the average 20-year career of an infantry officer, and I broke down roughly what jobs I would be doing and when, because you can, like, the path, right? You're a lieutenant, then a captain, then a major. Like you do. It's an escalator. I knew that I would only really be in charge of soldiers like maybe 7 or 8 years out of that 20. And I was about to enter in a stretch of protracted administrative work. You can either be like in command, or you're on staff. And staff is generally like the Army's version of screwing around with PowerPoints and making plans and stuff like that. It's like a very important job, but it like wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I had just spent 4 years as a lieutenant. I'd been a platoon leader, I was teaching at OCS. I was doing these things that were like with soldiers. I'd have to go through 2 more years of school to then get another 1.5 years worth of command. And then after that, I'd have like a 6-year period of not being in charge of anything. And then maybe I get selected for battalion command as a lieutenant. And so like as a lieutenant colonel. And so I was looking at like the next 16 years of my life. And I was like, oh, this math isn't like how I want to be spending my time. And like, I didn't have like a crisp vision of like my intent, but I did know what I didn't want to do. Or really, so I rationalized it to myself as like, oh, if I'm going to spend, most of my career sitting behind a desk, I'd much rather do it in the private sector. And so that was like why I got out. And that kind of thing, like that experience, I think really triggered me being so deliberate about like how I'm spending my day and my times.
Wow. There's a question here. Like, your intent is to be more joyful. Seneca asks, would you rather be rich and sad or poor and happy?
I mean, if those are the choices, it's poor and happy. But like, I am also trying to be rich and happy.
Rich and happy. Like exactly.
Right? Like,
however, I feel like you and I both taking the same path, right? Where we're sacrificing, or there was this potential of like richer and less happy.
Yeah.
We're going for hopefully temporarily poorer and more happy in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the question is like, what would make us less happy? And I think like explicitly in the near term, we are intentionally being lower status. And being lower status, which is like when you're a nobody content creator, everybody looks at you like you're kind of like an idiot. Not this chat, y'all are really nice, but like
yeah.
The
IRL friends.
Yeah, they're like
the post.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I wonder what conversation that's from.
Yeah, which is like fine. That's how everything interesting like starts, right? It's like everybody looking at you like, oh, you're wasting your time. You're never gonna make it. Whatever. Like we don't have ops in the traditional sense, but we do have egos that we're fighting, and like every time we get a rude comment on like TikTok, that's like the manifestation of this low status, embracing low status, so that maybe in the future we get to do a lot more of the things that we want to do. I don't know, Kristen. It's an interesting problem set.
Yeah, and I think we should end it here. We haven't really gotten into our internal hidden intents and all those sections yet, but maybe we'll talk about it in the next show. I feel like it deserves more time than we have right now.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody can drop a good question, we'll hit on it. But for now, Kristen, I want to ask, has this conversation changed your intent for the week at all, or like next week?
Yes, for sure. Especially now that you've brought it back to joy. Like, as you know, you and I, like, we're like, real
We talk about this all the
conversations.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, and actually, it was made more obvious because what's been happening. Oh, you don't know about this. I've been
I
like
don't.
working with my friend on trying to automate some aspects of my daily life because he's
Okay.
really good at coding. We've been messing around with various LLMs, so I've been narrating what I do like this entire yesterday. ECCV is still on. It's with Chow. I was like never telling Chow every day what I've been doing. And then I was getting more and more annoyed as I type because I'm like, my day is filled with like fragments of moving bits of text from one document to another, actually,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, a lot of G sheets, a lot of like, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
dang it, like this can't be automated because it'll take me more work to tell LLM to do what the thing, and I could just do the thing. So then I became incredibly unjoyful as I examined my day. And then my friend who's like, I think like older and wiser was like, hey, I feel like you're not being very zen right now. Like, aren't you supposed to be enjoying these little tasks? Something about like, after the ecstasy, the laundry kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was totally not that. And I was like, dang it. So I was being a bit self-reflective, but also being like, it's hard, right? Because like you and I both have like preferred creative tasks that we want to
Yep.
do that takes more time. But like there's always daily, like lots of little things that we got to get done.
Yep.
And by the end of the day, I'm always like, oh, I did so many little things, but the one important thing didn't get done, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm definitely going to drop one of my favorite quotes. You're going to get tired of it eventually, Kristen, if you aren't already, and chat you will too. But it's, why do we fall, Master Wayne? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up again, right? All right, Kristen, you want to hit this outro while we answer Ivy's question?
Sure. Ivy's question is, what punishment should be given
Oh,
to
I got
people who say intensive purposes when they should be saying intense and purposes? Oh, that's a common one.
I
But
think we
I
give.
think it's almost like too high level because we got people in my home feed who are questioning the different forms of war. So I feel like there's no hope for this one.
Yeah, I think we should give them a little grace, and then explain once, not in public, because people's egos are fragile. And then if they do it again the next time, then feel free to cut them out of your life.
Yeah. All right. Have a
All right,
great
y'all.
one.
Thank you so much. Bye,
See you
everyone.
next Thursday.